Okay, is my mic level okay? Yeah. Okay. This is going to be an attempt. I think this is my fourth day of doing Superstar Soldier attempts. Um, just doing this sort of as an interim thing. Picking up an old clear and finishing it off seems like a good way to take a break from the harder stuff that I'm working on, which right now is going to be Crisis Swing that I'm going to go back to when I finish this. Although I'm really going to want to start Final Soldier. So let me just close everything else. I'm going to play Caravan mode to warm up. I guess I'll do both Caravan modes. In case this is an actual clear run, I guess it would be cool to have the Caravan modes in the video. I don't know. Can always edit that in later. Caravan, caravan mode. Oh, I got a speech impediment. Caravan mode um, only has the red weapon in it, and it's a good warm up because I'm going to be using the red weapon for this run. My previous run, where I made it about, I think I made it into the boss rush or past the boss rush. I think I was at the final boss on the previous run when I died in the final phase of the final boss. And it was really disappointing because there were a bunch of people. Someone else had just dropped off a raid and there were a bunch of people watching. And I think I kind of was like, oh my god, there's 5 whole people watching this right now. Uh, Not that I'm blaming that on messing up because that final boss is just very tightly timed. So you gotta do some quick in and out dodges. And I've practiced that a ton, but I don't want to over practice it because this is a really reasonable game to clear without any sort of practice mode or anything like that. I haven't, other than a little bit of training on that final boss, I haven't used any save states or assists or anything for practice because initially I was just playing this on Wii Virtual Console, where all you get is a suspend state, which can be useful since this game has checkpoints and you can continue practicing on whatever stage you left off on, but it's not a stage select, that's for sure. Alright, so let's do the 5-minute one. So if you die in these caravan modes, you do respawn from the beginning again, so that doesn't immediately end the run, which is a little surprising to me, but I guess it makes sense. If you're running a competition or whatever, everyone gets 5 minutes, seems fair. And I think probably the boss bonus, I assume there's a boss bonus, would make up for, more than make up for any ability to like milk the beginning parts or anything like that. That would make dying strategic. But I guess, who knows? Maybe if you were running a competition, you would just say you have to complete it. So that seems lame. I don't really like. It doesn't matter. I'm not running a competition and never participated in a scoring competition, so I need to have opinions on what the rules ought to be. Just playing this for fun. Probably should turn on turbo fire. I think that's getting a little harder to burn through these. Yeah, that's actually hurting me a lot. I wonder whether they would expect that you use turbo fire when you're playing these caravan modes, because the red weapon does work alright without it. Like, it only shoots somewhat slightly slower. Yeah, this one's terrible because I lost the level 3 weapon. I don't know if they would be using turbo. I mean, it's built-in feature of the PC engine, so you would assume. Bizarre not to. Guess you can play it however you like. So I'm gonna use speed level 2, I think. Gonna just try to stick with that for as much of the game as possible. Some of the bosses, like the stage 3 boss, I'm gonna turn up to speed 3, but I don't want to be switching around on speed too much. Stage 4 boss, I'll also use speed level 3. And for him, I just gotta remember to stay ahead of those rockets. I'm gonna be using the red weapon and the missile sub-weapon. Yeah, I guess the sub-weapons aren't in caravan mode either. Different color weapons other than red, and the sub-weapons aren't in here. And that makes sense, because red is definitely like... Or, I mean, the sub-weapons definitely add a lot more uncertainty. Like a homing weapon in a scoring situation seems weird. Ah, hey, First World DF, thanks. I'm just warming up on the caravan mode now, and then I'm going to start the run. I think I got this one. I think I should be able to do it this time. Even if it's not on the first attempt, I'm going to do a few attempts today. It's Friday afternoon, and it's a good start to the weekend. So I'm not going to be fighting this boss like this. The stage 1 boss, I guess I'll take green for the stage 1 boss, just because I hate that fight, basically, and I don't want to drag it out. The bosses are really hit and miss in this game. Some of them I really like, and some of them I really do not. The stage 2 and 3 boss, those are both good variations on Big Core. Stage 5 boss, that snake thing, is really fun to fight. Stage 4 boss is kind of... I mean, that's maybe a good challenge, but it's real hard. Stage 7 boss is boring. Oh yeah, I guess actually it's probably more bad than good, but they're okay. It's really the stages that are the strength of the game, and then the bosses are just these quick, really strict challenges. It's not like later games where bosses would be the whole meat of the game. Alright, well, I was hoping to get a little bit of practice on the stage 6 boss, who's at the end of this 5-minute caravan mode, but that's okay. There it goes. Great stage 1 song. So I guess I'll do commentary because hopefully I'll be able to upload this one. Throat was getting dry the other night when I was doing it though. So Super Star Soldier is early 90s TurboGrafx game, PC engine. And this is it's not the first Star Soldier game, because that is Star Soldier, of course, but Star Soldier is a really diligent clone, a really faithful clone of Star Force from the arcade, so it honestly doesn't feel like its own thing. It's kind of like I don't know what was going on there. But Superstar Soldier is definitely sort of sets the trend for these really good PC Engine shoot 'em ups. And Star Soldier is definitely the central series in that trend. And these games are interesting because they're kind of in a middle ground where the classic shmups that are your more memorization heavy games that have sort of less layering to them and maybe less weapon systems, and certainly fewer power-ups, are sort of waning. And then your more modern stylish mods, which I think kind of starts with Darius maybe, and I think that's 87, are starting to pick up. And you've got a lot of toe plan games going on at this point in time. You got the Raiden series starting out in 1990. Compile is making games, so this is definitely like, I mean, you could even say it's one of the peaks of the shoot 'em up genre, because there's just a ton of stuff coming out that retains like some of the appeal of the classic games, where it's simpler, more approachable, more focused on just like shooting as many enemies as possible. And that's something you'll notice in this game in particular, is that certainly compared to an 8-bit game, but also just to arcade games that precede it, there are a lot of enemies that can be on screen at a time, and that's going to show up. Oh shoot, this is the one time I didn't want to take red, that boss, but that's okay. I think we're out of greens for the rest of the level. Yeah. So like, there can be a dozen or more enemies on screen at a time, and that's what the sprite limit is being used more for than for really high bullet counts or anything. Although there can be a lot of bullet buildup, it's definitely not like anything that you would call a proto Danmaku, like gun knack or something. But it is pretty similar to Rekka, I think, which is from a couple years later, 92. And it's also a Caravan style game, and kind of recognized as one of the starting points of manic shooters. So I think Superstar Soldier has a lot in common with that. I mean, Rekka was developed as a competitor to the Star Soldier series, because to the Caravan style gameplay. Yeah, I think that I agree. First of all, DF, that this is where it was like the technology was allowing them to push up to essentially like start pushing the limits of what a person can pay attention to and follow. And then, of course, later on it would get to the point where it's like beyond, when you talk about Zanmakis and manic shooters and stuff, it's like, wow, most people even can't keep up what's going on here. And that's kind of why I really like this era, that like it's not quite at the level where I have to study the game. I can very casually play this. I used to play this, just one session, one credit from the beginning for a fun run through the game, and you keep a lot of momentum, but it's not boring. I don't know. It's kind of a vague thing to say, but yeah, I think this is an interesting point in history. The subsequent Soldier games, I actually have not played Final Soldier ever. I used to think that was the last Soldier game, but it actually goes Superstar Soldier, then Final Soldier, then Soldier Blade is the last of them. And there's also Star Parodier on the Turbo CD, the PC CD, which is the Herodias equivalent for this series. And that one is very easy, and that it's definitely, if you wanted like a taste of these and just wanted a quick run through, you could play that one, because it's also got really nice graphics and stuff, if you don't mind the cute 'em up style. But Soldier Blade is definitely one of my favorite all-time shooters, and for a while I liked Superstar Soldier, but I wasn't into it at the same level. Just I guess Soldier Blade feels more polished, and it's got that amazing soundtrack. But Superstar Soldier's soundtrack is pretty good too, and I've gotten into the game a lot more as I've played it more. It's just at times it's very fast paced and very difficult, which in general it's not. Like, it's a very easygoing, certainly if you compare it to an arcade game. I guess easygoing isn't really a word that belongs in the shooting genre, but it's approachable in difficulty. There's just like a couple points that we'll see later, like in stage 6, where you might not know exactly what the hell's going on, because certainly while I'm playing it, I don't know what the hell's going on. So these bosses, a lot of them are variants of Big Core. The first boss of Gradius, and the idea of that is that you've got like a central weak point, and it's surrounded by laser emitters, which creates sort of a lane, or sometimes it can be multiple lanes, that center around that weak point. And so you've kind of got to cross in and out of the area where you can actually hit the boss from. You can't hit them from an angle. And sometimes Superstar Soldier lets you get around this, and that's primarily if you're using the green weapon, which can penetrate through most enemy shields. But the variance on the Big Core formula, I think, is like a good way of having quick boss fights. I don't know what the deal with these snake things are. They don't actually ever seem to hit me, but at the same time, I'm too scared to mess around, and so I still pretend like they can. And those snakes are something that I think, like different types of snakes, kind of like a trope in the shooting game genre, and definitely if you played Rekka, you'll recognize this as very familiar to the end of stage 2 boss. Or maybe it's it's the mid stage 2 boss, actually, not the end, which is a giant snake like that. They've got bombs here as well, which is something that isn't so present in the classic era shmups. I think like Darius 2, or I don't know if that's the first game with a bomb, but I definitely remember it there. And then, as time went on, that would become more and more of a staple of the genre. But in this case, the bombs aren't manually triggered. It's not an item that you hold in stock, which it is in Soldier Blade. But here it's just if you collect excess power-ups of the same type as what you always possess, or if you collect a flashing power-up item similar to the blue capsule in Gradius, then that'll be a screen clear. So it's like more bombs than Gradius, and like you can strategically use it because you can cycle a power-up to the correct color so that you'll get a bomb. So it's like, it's not totally game controlled, because like I compare it to the blue capsule in Gradius because that's kind of useless. Like, it shows up at some fixed rate and it's never very helpful. But in this game, I'll take advantage of bombs a little bit, but it still is mostly in the game's control. So I'm using the missile subweapon, which allows me to control a lot of this popcorn that comes in from the sides of the screen. And this game is very heavy on popcorn, which I think is just, that's going back to that. It's using the sprite limit as much as it can. So there's a lot of enemies that you'll just see get quickly popped off, where if I die, or if I were to use, oh man, that was a surprising hit. If I die, or if I were to switch the D weapon, there'd be like a lot more popcorn hanging around for a while. So I just took a hit there, and I have 4 hit points until I die. Taking a hit, or if I've got the blue shield activated, I think that means I've got 4 hit points. I think I might have 3 left. And if you do that, I'm going to take these blues so that I can power up a level. If you take a hit, that lowers you from whatever power level you're at, which the max would be 5, and drops you down to power level 3. Or, sorry, power level 2, which is usually just a straight shot. And so that limits your offensive capability a lot, and then you need to pick up a power-up item of the same color to raise your level back again. So sometimes you can strategically switch colors that you can get 2 in a row and move up a level, which is what you saw me do there just before that sub-boss. Oh man, once again, this popcorn getting too close to me, I think. So you've got a speed selector here, and that's another aspect that I think is, I think actually it's a lot of turbo games have that, like Blazing Lasers, and again Rekka, although that's not a turbo game. So I'm actually going to shut up for a second and focus on this boss, because I do tend to screw this up a lot. It's a very basic strategy here, though. Alright, that went perfectly. So the trouble with that boss is that if you don't start that circular dodge at just the right time, if you're a little bit late on it, then you'll get trapped in the corner by the missiles. And if you're too early on it, you'll end up with the hands catching up to you at the end. So it's not that hard, but you have to do it right a bunch of times, and if you don't have a weapon that can consistently hit the boss, like if you have to, well, what I'm trying to say is you can't stop to line up with the boss's weak point. You gotta kind of just let your weapon hit him as you're going by. So having the 3-way attack that you get when when Red gets to level 3 really is much more advantageous than if I had been stuck on Red level 2 and just had the forward shot. For this stage, you can see very Gradius inspired level design here. This is very similar to the Crystal stage from Gradius 2 or the Bubble stage from Gradius 3. And so that's one of the aspects of like the classic shmup design that I think was kind of dropped over the years. Having these more like platformy elements in stages where you got like crystals breaking up and you gotta dodge around them, and you can't necessarily just immediately shoot everything. I like stuff like that, but I do think that sometimes it can be overdone and like make it feel like less of a shooting game and more of just a moving around stuff game. I didn't really want to get hit there, but I'm just going to pick up these greens anyway, because there's a couple bosses coming up, starting with the boss of this stage, and then both the mid-boss and the final boss of stage 6 are going to be much quicker to fight with this green weapon because they have shields that only leave them open for a small window of time. And these lasers, again, this is just a very classic shmup feeling thing. Okay. Now I know why I was having so much trouble with that early part, because I was still on stage speed 3 from the boss. I forgot to turn down my speed to 1, which is what I normally like to use for this stage. I think you're pretty safe playing the entire game at 2, but if a feature's there, I kind of like to use it, so it's like, I feel like I have to switch speeds at some point. I do think it's advantageous certain times. These lasers. So there's a triple red power up here, but I'm not gonna go for it. Too risky. I have a bit of difficulty on periodic timers like that, but you can see there's no shooting necessary for the majority of that segment. So this is a boss where I'm going to take advantage of, I don't know if take advantage is necessarily the right way to describe it, but my strategy is to use sort of a classic glitch, or not glitch really, but an oddity about the control of certain shooting games, which is that the diagonal movement is actually faster than the horizontal or vertical movement. And that's actually a good thing about playing this game on an arcade stick, which is what I'm doing right now, is that I can much more carefully use diagonal movement, because that's kind of tends to be a hard thing to do on a D-pad. So that guy follows you around, and exactly what his tracking algorithm is, I'm not sure. It might just be that he can only move in 16 directions, so it can feel kind of strange at times. But using the diagonal movement, you can get ahead of him more quickly and use that to get in hits faster when you're shooting the head of the serpent, basically. Oh, come on. Get down here. Okay. So this is the hardest part of the game, this stage 6. And mostly it's just that everything's coming in very fast. You can see we've got like sort of a cube rush equivalent here with the enemies warping in. And there's just a lot happening at the same time, and it's kind of hard to follow with your eyes. So I would like that to cycle into a bomb. Right, so if you shoot those cycling power-ups for long enough, you can change them into the flashing bomb item. Sometimes, if you're really trying to carefully control one to get a particular weapon, that can mess you up. You can't just blindly fire at it. But then sometimes you can use it to your advantage. So I want this one to turn into green. It's right after yellow. The case where I want to make sure I don't shoot it too much. So hopefully the green shot is showing up correctly in the video or on the stream, because it is a flickering sprite, and I did set up the capture for 60 FPS, so it should show okay, but if it's for some reason not doing the right thing, then you might only see what looks like a 2-beam laser, but it's a 3-beam spread. That was good timing for that bomb, so I could get rid of the cube rush. Here we've got the... Man. Cornered me right away. Okay. I still killed him quickly with the green weapon, but I didn't want to power down like that, obviously. I'm gonna stick with red while I'm powering back up. Safest thing to do. There do seem to be considerably more red items because the power-up colors are scripted, so you can sort of memorize what you're gonna pick up where. Right into that one. So I would like to have green for this boss, but it's more important to make it to the boss safely, and I want red for that. Blue and red. Yeah, so it's just more important to get the power-ups at this point. So you can see this guy only has a small opening in his shield where you can hit him. And the biggest threat here is just these missiles that follow you around, because they're actually not popcorn. You do have to hit them quite a few times to kill them. And if you're moving around too quickly and not sort of aiming at the missiles from time to time, then they can kind of catch up to you and hit you from the side. Darn it, which is exactly what that one was just about to do. And the spread that this guy shoots is weird, so I just try to stay entirely ahead of it. See, now that my weapon's been powered down, I'm falling behind on the missiles. It's okay, I made it through that boss. Alright, only one hit. So I've got 9 lives to spare now. I don't know exactly what the extend routine is, but when you extend, you get gold lives, and those are instant respawn. If you end up back down at silver lives, those will send you to a checkpoint, which is always the beginning of the stage. All right, blue, then red. So this stage has these lasers coming in from above, and those are aimed at you at the beginning of the stage. I think when the laser emitters come on screen, they'll just be based on where the emitters are. So you just have to listen for the sound effect and dodge away from them. So you're going to slow down from, I'm still at speed 3 from that boss. And there's definitely no need to memorize this entire game. I don't have the vast majority of these layouts memorized at all. I just have a vague sense of what enemy type is coming next. Yeah, so you can see that the lasers now are based on where those emitters are. So this is the only sort of battleship that we get in this game. As long as I stay over on this side, I should be okay. Free to cross over now because the cannons were destroyed. So fly inside it. And here we go with sort of a mazy section. And this kind of reminds me of stage 3 or 4 of Image Fight. It has like a maze that you're moving up through as sort of larger enemies can block your path. And so this has got these gates that I'm gonna try to kill before they close. And then there are these medium-sized yellow, or I guess they're like orangish enemies that can kind of push you back, especially if you don't have a fully powered up weapon. I'm getting some good bombs in here to clear the path for me. I'm not sure there's going to be another opportunity to, but it actually might not be the worst idea to switch to green before this boss. Just to speed things up. This is a fairly easy but also very boring boss fight. Yeah, I didn't want to take any chances trying to cycle that power-up item. That would have been my only way to switch back to green. So the deal with this guy is he does exactly what you can see. He just shoots these straight spaghetti projectiles, or each of the pods shoots those straight along the trench that they're situated over, and then they shoot the bullet spreads that are targeted at you. And the only difficulty of it is that they just have a tiny hitbox in the center of them, and that's not an issue if you're using the green weapon or the yellow weapon, because those are penetrating hit scan weapons. But for blue and red, lining up with it, even though I'm lining up in fairly safe areas, just using the diagonal shot, and getting in a couple shots as I pass by, it's hard to get in more than 1 or 2 shots at a time. He's like moving up and down with only this very small hitbox. So I guess I didn't think about it, but this is another big core. This time it's just 2 of them. But since it doesn't move laterally at all, it's really like the spaghetti lasers it shoots aren't a threat. But maybe the reason that this boss is kind of weak is that now we're going to enter into this escape sequence, or what people would call the speed stage in Gradius. So, if I was smart, I would have made a save state at some point and just memorized this part, but I haven't done that, so I'm going to be dodging by eye. I have a vague sense of where everything's coming from, but alright, there we are. And that last gate would crush you if you're not far enough up on the screen, which is why I moved ahead. That was a clean escape. So now on to stage 8, the final stage, and by far the longest stage of the game. We're going to have not only a boss rush coming, but something that I don't know I've ever seen in any other shooting game, which is a popcorn rush. So this game is going to start, or this stage is going to start, well, actually it starts with this little opening segment, but then it's going to kick into a rush of every sort of popcorn we've seen in the game so far. And this part is pretty simple. You really can almost walk away from the game and just hold the shoot button. But there are a couple points in it, and that's if you're powered up all the way. If you're not powered up all the way, it's still not that hard, really. But if you are, and you've got the multi-directional shot, especially the red shot with missiles, just kind of covers everything for you. Red shot is the only one that has any side or rear fire at the full power-up level. The other ones are all just forward spreads, basically. Yeah, this part's, it's not very threatening, but the threat of it ends up being that, like, you can go on autopilot too much and lose focus and basically miss what's happening. And I guess that's probably not a problem for a lot of people, but that's something that definitely screws me up. Short attention span, and part of the reason why I'm commenting over this is because it kind of does help me keep my attention on what I'm doing instead of letting my mind wander. Coming up on, oh great, perfect timing. So that's one of the only phases that can get you if you're in the wrong spot. Unfortunately, the power up that may have let me get my red stronger, showed up at exactly the same time as the wave that I had to pay attention to. But I actually did the right thing and played defensively, and there were plenty of power-ups afterwards. So that's just the opening to the stage. Now we've got stage 8 itself, and then there'll be a boss rush. So sometimes, I don't know if this is an emulator setting thing, but sometimes at the very top of the screen or the very bottom, you'll still be able to see the sprite of a power-up, but not actually pick it up. Alright. Starting with the stage 3 boss, these guys are kind of mixed up. He usually doesn't shoot 3 of those. It's usually 1 or 2, and so I usually just dodge up into the corner. But I ended up trapping myself there because I got unlucky. So that's going to cause me some trouble, actually, because now I'm going to have to fight everyone else without my spread shots. And that's going to make all of them harder. Just try to use the missiles for this guy. Missiles are pretty weak. This isn't Raiden, where your missiles do a lot of damage. But they will gradually wear things down. You can see they're homing in on that projectile that they can't actually hurt. It's down even further, but I just want to take it safe. Not attack him from the center. Alright, so now it's stage 4 boss, this guy again. The missiles are going to help me out here once again. Yes, I went a little early there. Or a little late, I mean. Or wait, no, it was a little early. Just messes with my head. I think I'm just stupid. And that's what happens if you go too late. Ah, that's way too early. I had to sort of jerk back there, which really could hurt me. Okay, good. I got what I wanted there. It's really important in that mess of power-ups that you don't get yellow by accident. Yellow, I mean, actually, yellow is okay on these bosses, but the difficulty with it, yellow is like a flamethrower weapon that spreads out in front of your ship, and the trouble with using it is that it's the same color as most of the bullets in this game, which are like yellow and orange, and so it basically just makes you blind to bullets. It's a cool looking effect, but it really makes the game a lot harder. I think I even read in an interview someone asked, I don't know if it was the lead designer or who, about the yellow weapon and why it's so bad. And he said something to the effect of like, I think it can be useful sometimes. I don't know if that was like 20 years later, he's trying not to give away like, oh, really good against bosses, or if it was just a dismissive answer. It's always funny to ask a game dev like, why did you do this wrong? And if I had to guess, if you ask me why it's the way it is, it's that the effect looks really cool, and it's probably one of those things where they're like, oh, we can do this really cool thing. It looks awesome. The turbo graphics, something we couldn't do before. Like, yeah, it doesn't really work that well as a weapon, but it does work well as a graphic. So here comes the final boss. Pretty sure he moves in a totally fixed pattern here. I just don't have it memorized at all. So the next part, he's going to have these two side cannons, and I'm actually going to try to destroy those before I get in the center. I'm probably good with just destroying one of them. You can see these spread bullets he's shooting, they're fairly fast, but it's not anything that I would call like manic speed bullets like your Psycho and video system games, where things really speed up. Alright, so this lightning is going to be pretty deadly here. Moves very fast, and it's targeted. Why did I move up there? I was like, I'm going to try something new. Alright, final phase. And not having a rear firing weapon in this phase is a pretty big disadvantage. Exactly why. I'm actually not sure I can win this fight in this condition. Because he just keeps multiplying. I've never had it last this long before, but I've never seen him divide into five like that. Ah, that's too bad. That was no death until the final boss. And it's really just like that guy wouldn't be an issue if I had held on to my weapon. But being with that level zero red weapon just makes that fight almost impossible. That's okay. I'm gonna stretch my legs for a minute and then I'm gonna do another run. All right, time to give this another run. I think I'm probably just gonna do these two runs right now. Because now that I'm getting all the way to the final boss, it's a pretty long run. I didn't get dropped back to any checkpoints because by the time I got to that boss, my lives were all gold already. Um, uh, all the extend lives you get are gold, I think. I don't know how the gold live system works, frankly. It's confusing. It's really an odd system. But I do like that the game has checkpoints in it because, especially if you were playing this on the original hardware, you really need checkpoints as like a practice system. Not I was just to say, it's not always enjoyable to have checkpoints on every death, especially if you have a game where you don't uh, have many defensive options, or you don't respawn with HP or anything. But for a 45-minute game, like, you gotta have something for the player to be able to practice. And I think that stage select is fine too, but definitely the traditional way to do it at this point in time is just to throw those checkpoints in there. And I feel like the way that I would play stuff like this, I didn't ever have a TurboGrafx or PC Engine, and I was a little kid. I'd never heard of those things in the 90s. I don't think I heard of TurboGrafx until Wii Virtual Console. When games were coming out for that, I was like, what the heck? There's another 16-bit console? I don't even know if I knew what Sega Master System was at that point in time, let alone, obviously, the dozens and dozens of other systems that existed in other regions, and even in the US during the 90s. But, you know, I played Contra and Gradius 3, and Super C, and stuff like that on the Nintendo platforms. And then I did play stuff a lot on Wii Virtual Console, which didn't have any sort of save state feature. And the way that I would do it is, like, my goal would be not necessarily 1cc, but just to clear the game in one sitting. Because you don't have any sort of save state or save stage select to load into a later stage. The next time you play the game, that means you have to start from the beginning every time. And so, given the limited attention span or limited time that you have to play video games, you know, even as a kid, I wasn't sitting down to play video games for more than an hour or two. I mean, frankly, my parents didn't even really let me do that, but I would sneak in as much time as I could. But being able to beat something without a password system in 2 hours meant that, like, you had to move through, even if you were getting sent back to checkpoints or putting in credits, you still had to move through in just a few attempts. Otherwise, you know, you're sitting down and playing the game for 8 hours if you don't know how to do some checkpoint. So I always thought that was a reasonable way to play console games like this. And these days, you know, I go back to that stuff sometimes and do a 1 credit clear, so the Contra games are always my favorite, so those are the ones that I sort of prioritize. And then I did Soldier Blade and some other PC Engine games. Wild Guns on Super Nintendo, that's definitely one of my favorite shooters. Gradius 3, I actually haven't cleared the... I've cleared the NES Gradius in 1 credit, but I've never cleared Gradius 3 in 1 credit. I just get so bored when I play it now. I'm not really into the Gradius games very much. And I want to do it just, like, as a matter of principle. I feel like I should clear that one. But especially because I used to really like it. But I sort of wore it out by being not good at it and playing it over and over again. And I do think it actually is a pretty slow-paced game. And so when I've gone back and tried to clear that, I never can get behind it. Where in the case of, like, Super Star Soldier, this game really is exactly to my taste now. I could spend a lot of time playing it. And it feels great to play it on an arcade stick too, because that's a transition that I made recently, like within the past year of trying to play everything on arcade stick now. I mean, actually, really, I'm not just trying to, I do play everything on stick now. Unless I'm, like, using the flip grip with the Switch, which is kind of fun to do for handheld mode, but, you know, other than that. Uh, and so this feels perfect. Playing it with an arcade stick instead of an old controller. And this game does have built-in auto fire. That's pretty typical for console shmups to have some form of built-in auto fire. Even in the NES Gradius, you can hold the shoot button. You can in Zanac as well. And Rekka. You know, those are... I don't know how much deeper you want to go into the Famicom library other than those three, but I guess it's, you know, Star Soldier if you insist on playing that, but you could just play Star Force. So you don't have to worry about, you know, emulator auto fire settings or anything like that, because that's just built in. And so the normal rate of auto fire, if you just hold the 2 button, is what you see right now. And I'm just using this to demonstrate it. And you do need to use this. Well, okay, so this is with the turbo switch flipped off, because the TurboGrafx has a built-in turbo switch on the controller. And now I've turned the turbo on. I don't know if you can see that, the emulator pop up that indicated that. But so now I've flipped the turbo switch on, and you can see it increases the firing rate of the red weapon. But here, I'll switch to green and demonstrate that with the green weapon, so this is with turbo off, and now if I turn the turbo on, it doesn't work. It does this like super short range nonsense, because you're not meant to be tapping the button with that one. So I don't know why they didn't just balance them all to work normally with the turbo switch off. But with red, you can take advantage of the higher firing speed while point blanking. Thanks, I'm glad you like the commentary. I sort of stutter a lot and have to think about my words because I'm kind of trying to play the game. But I'm trying not to repeat myself too much either. So this stage, the fireworks here, or the solar flares, or whatever you want to call these, kind of remind me of Gradius 2, or, sorry, the NES Gradius 2. I guess there's stuff like that in the other Gradius 2 as well, or Light Force. So this boss, like, the sense in which this is a variant on Big Core is that it's got this central weak point that it blocks with its claws, but then it's also firing a laser, and instead of having lasers on either side of the core, creating like those the classic lane markers, the laser there drags behind the core, and it means that, like, to line up with it, you always have to cross over the laser and do sort of like a jump rope act, which is cool, and I like that boss a lot. Yeah, luckily this is not that hard a game, and it's one that I have played for long enough that I have some level of memory. Like, I can't say that I've memorized it really. I probably played about 15 hours of it, and most of that time was probably like 10 years ago, at least 15 years ago, probably. This was actually one of the earliest games to come out on Wii Virtual Console, and definitely that was when, see, Wii Virtual Console is when, for me, I got into, finally, like, really got into shmups, because I had liked them before that, playing them on consoles, but there just wasn't that much to choose from. Like, when you're in the GameCube era, it's like, or the PS2 era, you got Garaga or Gradius 5. Do you want the annoying treasure game or the less annoying treasure game? Which I don't want to complain about them, but they're not my favorite, and they were the only two options at the time. So when Wii Virtual Console started to have all these emulated games on it, I wasn't that big on playing emulators either. I'm still not. I am using that now, but it's not always my favorite thing to do. Um, but that gave me access to a much larger library of shmups, and this was one of the earliest ones that came out, and one of the most recommended ones on there, so it was one of the first ones I picked up. And I ended up liking some others better and playing those more, but this is still always a really good one to get back to. Well, I would actually like to be able to do live commentary of my own runs. I don't know if that's a good idea necessarily, but I've been enjoying streaming and watching other people's streams, and doing events is fun. I've had people do really good commentary, but I guess it's kind of narcissistic to want to comment your own run, but here we are. I didn't do the dodge. I fell behind, but I still got away. The other thing about doing this dodge is that you need to be all the way at the back of the screen. If you're pushed up a little bit and you go across, then the missiles are gonna cut you off basically, because they go a certain distance before they rotate and target you. Alright, stage 5. This is the crystal stage. Even the music of this sort of... You know what? It doesn't remind me of the crystal stage from Gradius, but it reminds me of Crystal Snail from Mega Man X. And I don't know what the instrument is in it that brings that comparison to mind. So for this stage, I gotta remember... Well, I just pressed the wrong button there, but I gotta remember to drop to speed 1. So I'm gonna just slowly dodge around stuff. And it would be nice to have the defense pod sub-weapon here, which would... It basically rotates around the ship and can catch some bullets for you. But when it comes to the sub-weapons, it's actually a lot more difficult to swap those than the main weapons, because the sub-weapon has 3 power levels. And same as with the main weapon, you need to collect the same one consecutively to power it up. So you need to collect 3 M's or 3 D's to reach max power. But if I were to collect a D now and switch to a different sub-weapon, that would reset my power level to 1. And I would then need to collect 2 more D's to get to max power. And then if I wanted to switch to M again, I would need 3 M's. Because that would also be reset, and so that is not ever something that I risk doing. I always pick either the D or M sub-weapon and stick with it for the entire game. Right now I'm using M, the missile, because I think that complements the red weapon better. It fires 4 missiles at a time if you're using red. Whereas with the other weapons, it only fires 2 missiles at a time, so it's actually less powerful depending on what your main shot is. So these lasers are a periodic timer, sort of a... I always think of stuff like this as platformer style level elements, and that's something you see here and there, not here and there actually, I guess fairly frequently in Superstar Soldier, because this is kind of a cross-up of classic and modern style shmups. Or not cross-up, really. It's just, it sits in between. It's in a transitional period. So that makes these stages feel like fast paced, but also I don't need to be shooting during this part, but also they have some parts where you don't need to shoot, basically. Again! Yeah, these lasers. Always one of them sags me. I'm not gonna go for the temptation. That's really unfortunate, though. That extra death really didn't matter. I was shifting my leg position after I died, and at this point, almost wonder if it wouldn't be better to go back to the stage 5 checkpoint. Because the stage 6 recovery is probably going to be harder than stage 5 would be. But I'm not, I think at that point, if I were to like strategically go back to a recovery, that would be like, may as well just reset the game. Which is what I'm tempted to do, but I actually like doing recoveries during runs. So I don't do the whole reset if you die once thing. This is a case where I have to deal with these yellow balls that he's dropping a little bit more because of the fact that I only have the basic weapon. Wow, I almost trapped me in a corner there. Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of my first clears of a game, you know, like the first time I cleared G Darius, for instance, I just remember because that's a recent one, it has a recovery in it. It's like that is part of the fun, I think. I don't think I'm gonna recover this one though. I'm in really bad shape right now. I did not need to take like 6 deaths on that boss. I could have played that a lot better. Right. Cycle to red, come on. And recovery, the thing about recovery that really hurts you is losing that sub weapon. It's gonna take a while to get that back. And it definitely, it's not that powerful, but because of, actually, well, it's convenient that there's 2 M's there. Not that powerful, but it does add a lot of that side coverage. Either one of them, the defense pod or the missile, both help cover you from the side and behind and thin out these popcorn herds. So I'm back to red 5. I've got my shield back because you get that at the transition between. I took 2 hits there. 1 was expected. You get the shield at the transition between power level 2 and power level 3. So I've got the shield back again. And I've got missile, I think he's up to level 3 now. So I just need another red, 2 more reds. I'm gonna take this green though. Ah, what hit me there? I really have no idea what touched me there. Okay. That's bad. So I switched to those blues because I needed to get the shield back. Wow, that actually blew, killed that boss faster than I expected it to. Stay red. Okay. Yeah, that worked pretty well. I've never really experimented with the blue weapon that much in this game because the projectiles are very large, and it seems like they just get blocked by a lot more stuff than red does. Oh, I had turbo off. But I kind of want to try it out some more. Maybe I'll do a third run today, and I'll just use it to experiment with blue. Do something different, since I think that this run's close to over. On cycle. And cycle. Mod cycle. So the way that you can shoot those to stop them from cycling, I think is pretty neat. That's something that I don't know that I've seen elsewhere. I know in like Raiden 4, for instance, if you stop shooting, then that will stop the power-up cycling, so that's kind of a similar idea. Missiles. Alright, that takes care of him. Stage 7, the main threat here. This is like the fleet stage, sort of. The main threat here is going to be lasers that are coming from the top. So I just got to stay on top of those. And at the beginning of the stage here, they're going to target me, essentially. So I just need to listen for the sound effect and move a little bit out of the way when I hear that coming. So I'd like to turn this item into a bomb if I can. Be helpful. Picking up the power items does give you a couple points, so I guess score-wise, you theoretically want to get everything. But that seems like a really unrealistic way to play the game because you're just going to be constantly changing weapons if you do that. Your sub-weapon's going to be all screwed up. I don't think anyone would actually play like that, and I doubt that was the intention of the design. And almost made it through there. So here, now that the laser emitters are on screen, they're only going to fire at their position. I'm gonna try to just herd these bullets and let my missiles do the work. Slow going, but I don't want to take any risks. Raiden 4 is my favorite shooter. I love Raiden 4. I have not 2cc'd it, so... Oh, 2cc. For a second I thought you said 2-alled. I was like, oh my god, you 2-alled it? That's really challenging. But 2cc is still good. That's a very hard game. I haven't actually... It's weird to say for my favorite game, but I haven't 1cc'd it because I just... it takes a lot of practice. Yeah, but Raiden 4 is so fun. Like, it's... If there's anything... See, I'm not a 2-all guy, because I'm definitely just not at that skill level. And, I actually do prefer like more of a 20 or 25-minute game instead of a can't believe I got trapped there. Like a shorter game. Um, so like two loops aren't, or two all clears are not really my thing. But if there was a game that I were to do it for, which I may in the future, it would definitely be Riding 4. That's kind of right now. Just haven't been able to have time to focus on that because always playing a bunch of different games. Just something I always go back to over the years. Yeah, the console difficulty is fine. Yeah. And that's the Raiden series is definitely. I wouldn't say it's definitely not an inspiration for this game because I think this game came out before Raiden or at about the same time, and certainly Raiden is itself. The original Raiden is very derivative of other shooters being made at the time, but in terms of the gameplay itself, Raiden is definitely a close point of comparison for the Star Soldier series. You've got the red spread weapon, then you've typically got a laser weapon. In this one, it's green. And then you've got these homing missiles. And a lot of, most of the bullets are aimed. There's a lot of popcorn, which I think is definitely a Raiden-y thing. This game doesn't have tanks or any sort of ground enemies, really. I guess it does have those, like, robot things in Stage 3. There's, like, half-buried robots, but by and large, there are not a lot of ground enemies in this game. Or there aren't really. So that would be one big difference with Raiden, but Soldier Blade actually adds in a lot of that stuff, and so that one feels even more like it would be your best shot at a console Raiden game if it were the early 90s, and you don't want to play the crappy ports of Raiden that were on Mega Drive and Super Nintendo. Alright, so there goes that guy. You almost need to be talking about something to get through that fight. That guy's so boring. So the walls that extend during this escape sequence. I don't actually need to be shooting right now. These walls don't kill you if you touch them directly, but I believe it's either while they're moving or if the tip of it touches you, they kill you. So you do have to be somewhat careful, even though it's just a little hard to predict whether it's going to hurt you or not, so it's best not to touch them at all, even though I scraped on one a little bit there. So entering into stage 8 now. This is a very long stage, so there's still quite a ways to go. And I'm going to try to remember to switch to green before the boss rush, because that's going to help me out a lot. Oh yeah, that power-up troll is hilarious. I didn't point that out, but at the end of the escape stage, there are all those power-up and score items, and if you pull back to try to grab them, like if you miss them, like, oh, I'm gonna go grab that stuff. Well, you get crushed by the last gate if you do that. So you do have to move up on the screen to get through that, and I've made that mistake myself. I think everyone probably would at some point or another. This is the popcorn rush, where you see every popcorn enemy you've seen in the game. You know, I assume it's every popcorn enemy that you've seen in the game, but I don't actually know that for a fact. I've never like written them all down, and there's a lot. But it's nothing but popcorn, and it goes on for a while, and it's pretty easy, but you can always mess up at some point. Come on! I gotta stop calling it easy. It's making me take hits. You do have a, if it's not taken for granted, you do have a very large hitbox in this game, so you can't be grazing past bullets. You gotta steer clear. And that's somewhere where the defense pod will help you out if you use that as a sub-weapon, because that is it's a pair of rotating pods. I didn't know those guys shot bullets. It's a pair of rotating pods, and they will clear out bullets for you. Alright, so I should be able to power back up now. And I think there's a cycling power up that I should be able to get green off of. So now we begin the stage itself. It's bad timing on that cycler. It was too close to the top of the screen. I wouldn't have been able to pick it up where it was. I know, because if the item is partially cut off, you can't get it. So I might be able to cycle it back to green. But it might end up turning into a bomb, because I can't stop the missiles from hitting it. Might be able to get the other one as green, actually. Come on. There we go. This is green level 4. Not as long as green level 5, but that's actually not really going to make a difference here. We do the stage 3 boss, then the stage 1 boss. Stage 2 boss won't appear because that guy's a boat and we're in space. And same with the stage 7 boss, because that's part of the interior of some ship. It wouldn't make any sense for that to show up here. Got our old friend, the giant robot. I think he moves faster as the fight goes on. I'm not sure exactly, but it does seem like it takes me longer, or like I'm farther behind. Thanks for watching, First World DF. Glad you enjoyed it. Alright, so it would be great if I can power up green, but I don't think I'm going to get the chance to. Yeah, there's no greens in there, and there's no cyclers in there either. But given that I still have my shield up, I'm better off sticking with green. That was much more of a micro dodge than I wanted to have to do. Thought that I was going to get trapped in the top left corner if I hadn't done that. Alright, and now we've got the stage 5 boss. Didn't realize he was going to go immediately in that direction. really good shape too. So the upside to having the green weapon is now that I've been reduced to level 2, if I was still using, and this is the final boss here, this is the first phase of it coming up. So if I was still on the red weapon, like it was in my previous few runs, and was reduced to the level 2 after getting hit, I would have a back attack, but the back attack isn't helpful for the first few phases of this boss. It is helpful for the final phase, but as long as I can squeak through, green will be powerful enough. I believe it won't matter that I don't have a back attack. So the pattern he moves in there is fixed, and he's just firing those aimed spreads at you. You don't really need to memorize it, even though it's fixed pattern. You can move fast enough to stay way ahead of it. Now here he's going to come down and do another big core style attack. And I'm going to try to kill one of these lasers on the side. This is one of the few opportunities you have of destroying some of the weapons off of a boss. And I like to just get that laser quickly because I want to get trapped on the side of the screen. Alright, I should actually be at speed 2 for this guy. Got 2 hit points left. I can tell because my shield is red. And at this point, I need to switch to speed 3. Switch green. Okay. That was awesome timing. My shield back because it's green, and then I foolishly right through a laser. Alright. This guy's going to continue to multiply if I can't kill him quickly enough. And that's going to be hard to get control of if he ends up going behind me, which is exactly what he did. Alright, there we go. Alright, well, that was my first clear of Superstar Soldier. A game I've been playing for years, but not put a lot of time into ever. Not really ever made the clear attempt, because when I began playing this, 1cc's weren't even something that was on my mind. I don't even know that I'd heard the term before. So there was a kind of long recovery in there. I never got sent back to a checkpoint, but that was an ugly run for sure. Compared to the previous one, in which I did everything perfectly until the final boss, that one, I just took a ton of deaths all along the way. But this is a great game. Definitely one that everyone should try. I think this is a good one if you're into retro games or shooting games. Either way, it's very approachable. I think it's a good beginner shmup too. I think a lot of people would like this. And I think I'll play the Caravan modes here once the credits finish rolling, because I didn't actually play them in this recording before playing the main mode. Why did my... oh. Oops. Did the emulator reset or something? That's a good thing I have it all on video. Oh, I leaned against the controller. Why would that... Oh wow, I must have my controller set up so that pressing start and back at the same time reset it. Alright, so that's not what I wanted. Let's just do a quick run of 5-minute caravan mode. I'll do the 2-minute and then the 5-minute. I wonder if I should play this game one more time. Just get a better looking run for a clear. If I show that to someone, they're gonna be like, "You're such a scrub." But I guess that's just the honest truth. So the caravan mode, I think, is actually, although caravan modes aren't really a thing in shooting games anymore and would really never hang around for very long. It's like a couple years in the early 90s when this was being done, which I guess means it probably wasn't that successful or popular a mode. Nevertheless, I think that these purely scoring focused modes do sort of foreshadow where the genre was going. You can see like these huge amounts of items to pick up. It's not the giant streams of stars or crystals or whatever that you'll see in a cave game or Crimson Clover or whatever. But it's still more dynamic than medals that you would see in Raiden. And these actually, they do show up a little bit in the later parts of the main game, but they're pretty insignificant. As here in the caravan mode, they're a pretty major part of your score. Oh, almost. I had to be so close to killing that boss. That's part of the challenge, is that you need to speed kill that guy. So now let's check out the 5-minute mode. This one's gonna have a couple bosses in it. I think these are fun stages. I don't know that necessarily I would spend any time playing them for score, just because there's no one to compete with. I think competing with myself to get the highest stage possible on these would be a very substantial challenge. Naturally, it's very easy to survive these stages compared to the main game. I'd say they're even easier than stage 1, which is another thing I think makes them feel similar to more modern shmups, where like in even in a cave game, or almost especially in a cave game, stage 1 is always like such a freebie. You never have to do anything to survive, and that sort of makes sense from the perspective of an arcade operator, where you want the player to put in a coin and get some amount of time on the game, not die immediately, because that, certainly by that point in time, when they're competing directly with consoles, no one wants to just be dumping quarters into a machine, which kind of, I mean, in a way, I think that sort of means the arcade was already dead. But the idea that like you should get 5 minutes, your quarter should buy you 5 minutes on the machine, basically, I think is built into the stage design of 90s, especially later 90s shooters. Um, and just to me, that's what these caravan stages feel like. Like anyone can survive for 5 minutes in this. If you don't, if you die, you do get sent to a checkpoint at the beginning of the stage, like you normally would, and you can continue your 5 minutes. In the caravan stages, you only see the red weapon, and you don't see the sub weapons at all. That makes sense, because I think the homing weapon would just add a lot of weird uncertainty. Wouldn't be great for a scoring challenge. And the defense pod is defensively oriented, so I don't think it would be all that useful. I guess actually I was talking before about the lack of ground enemies in the game, and that's sort of what these boxes in the caravan mode are like. That's all ground enemies, even though they're not really enemies. So I'm left with about 30 seconds to kill this guy, and this guy's pretty tough to kill that quickly. I've never actually finished this stage. I'll try to play more aggressively than I normally would and see if maybe I can do it. Still got 1 hit point left. That's tough. So whether I died on that guy or ran out of time, I think wouldn't make any difference. And I wonder if you aren't able to beat him, if you would be better off just dying and starting the stage again and taking some extra points. But that's the kind of strategy that I don't really need to think about because I'm not going to be playing that mode anymore. So that's it for Superstar Soldier. I'll probably be putting that game away for a long time, if not forever. I haven't played Final Soldier at all, so maybe I'll play that sometime soon. Right now, I'm going to go back to Crisis Wing, right now being next time I stream, which will probably be either tonight or tomorrow night, or sometime in the early afternoon or the late evening East Coast time. So thanks everyone for watching.